Frank! Yeah, that's right, we are talking about Frank Seravalli, and yeah, all weird jingles aside, if you're here in the Vancouver area, you've had to hear that Frank Seravalli song every week on the radio for what seems like an eternity, but today what I wanted to do was talk about Frank Seravalli and some comments that he made not about the Vancouver Canucks, because of course he's always on Vancouver radio talking about this team, but instead I wanted to go over some commentary that he had made about the Detroit Red Wings. These are pretty interesting, and it's going to be given to us via Usual Personality 347's post on the R Detroit Red Wings subreddit. They posted the updates from this week in Wingsland, and it's a very deep dive as to a whole bunch of news and rumors and signings and all this stuff from around the NHL that loosely relate to the Detroit Red Wings. There are talks about Mitch Marner, there are talks about Claude Giroux, Gavrikov, Kuzmenko, trade options like K'Andre Miller, Pettersson, Robertson. It's a really big mixed bag of NHL news and how the Red Wings could relate to them. This is where we dive into some of the updates from Seravalli. The whole Reddit post will be linked in the description if you want to see the entire week's worth of news, but Seravalli on the Daily Faceoff podcast gave his thoughts on the Red Wings. He believes that Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko types are accessory pieces, and they should not be the focus for the Red Wings. He thinks Yzerman must be pretty aggressive. Seravalli used JT Compher and Vladimir Tarasenko as trade names, potentially meaning there are takers for either. He also mentioned Detroit should not throw a big dollar amount at Aaron Ekblad, as he would be another one of Detroit's problems long term. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this. Talking about some of the names that the Red Wings have that could be seen as more accessory type pieces and not necessarily the main focus, I would tend to agree with Tarasenko, especially after the way he had performed this previous season. It was quite obvious that he didn't really fit in the Red Wings system in the ways that pretty much everybody hoped that he could. Patty Kane, though, I think he's a little bit better than just an extra added accessory. Like, I think at this stage of his career, he's in the latter days, he's not a youngin' anymore, but in this stage of his career, on a Stanley Cup championship caliber team, maybe then you can say that Kane is an extra added piece. Tarasenko could very well be in that too, but for the Red Wings and the timeline that this team is at, sure, they're still trying to contend and make the playoffs. It hasn't happened in a few years here, but for a team that's on the outside looking in, I think it's fair to say that Patty Kane is maybe one of the more useful pieces that transcends the accessory label. Now, I get it, this is pretty much a conversation about semantics and whether or not Seravalli's definition of an accessory piece aligns with mine, but I do think that Kane is a little bit more valuable than Tarasenko at this point. So with Seravalli saying that a guy like Tarasenko and or a JT Compher could be on the block, thinking that Yzerman could be aggressive in shopping these guys, if the implication is that there would be other teams interested in either of these players, then of course, Steve Yzerman needs to start taking a look and checking out his options. Nothing against JT Compher, nothing against Vladimir Tarasenko, but these guys, and the way they had performed for the Wings this previous season, it's very replaceable level production and impact, especially for guys who happen to be in their 30s already. Get a prospect in there, get a young guy developing, and try to see what a Berggren or potentially a Nate Danielson or anybody in that sort of mold could do with that ice time. This is the time to try to let those rebuilding pieces finally have their impact on the team. A reply in the comments from AmeriCanada98 says, I agree with Seravalli in general on these points, but I do think that unless you're getting Marner or Robertson, keeping Kane for another year or two really helps round out the offense, and losing him without adding one of those guys would really hurt the offense. He is also great for the younger guys' development. And that is, I think, a very reasonable conclusion. Patrick Kane is still so good that it would probably be a good thing, I would say, for the Wings to re-sign him and keep him around. And look, I'm not going to go out there and say that it's a guarantee that Jonathan Toews is an amazing ad, but if Patrick Kane's presence in Detroit precedes some sort of a Jonathan Toews signing, then I would be kind of interested in that, I'm not going to lie. Now, of course, yeah, we don't know if he's going to be good. That's the thing. He could be. If there's anybody to break the rules, you know, the exception to the rule, it was always, oh, Patrick Kane's hip resurfacing surgery has never been come back from before. Every NHL player who had it was never good enough to play in the NHL long-term anymore. And then Patrick Kane broke that. Jonathan Toews, could he do the same? I'm not too sure. Self-induced vomiting and enemas in India definitely do change the way that is going to be viewed. But anyways, let's talk about that final point that Seravalli went out there and discussed, how the Red Wings should not try to grab an Aaron Ekblad-like name in free agency, because he will just be yet another one of these cap casualties for Detroit. Aaron Ekblad is 29 years old, and he is going to be a free agent. He's probably not going to get a contract with the Panthers, just considering the ask that he could probably get. And when you consider the fact that he was formerly a near point-per-game defenseman before getting injured, and he was never really the same after that, now he is a near point-per-game defenseman in the playoffs, but still, Aaron Ekblad is a name who, playing in potentially his last days as a Florida Panther, is due to demand a raise on the open market. And if Detroit ends up grabbing him, like, he's probably the second best D-man on the team behind Seider, you know? I don't think that's too hot of a take. Is that a potential casualty here for the cap? I think the way Seravalli is thinking about Aaron Ekblad, he's kind of classifying Ekblad in the same way that the Comphers and the Cops could be classified as on this team. And while I can understand the sentiment, Stevie Y, bargain bin hunting, quote-unquote, grabbing guys who are a little bit older, signing them to middle-term deals, and messing up the cap in the process, I do kind of think that Aaron Ekblad would be better and more impactful than a Compher or a Cop or a Tarasenko, right? Is that not fair to try to think about? Would it not be reasonable to say that he's probably got a better shot at being more impactful than those guys? I don't know. But I do see where Frank is coming from here. The Wings have already spent too many years and dollars on guys with contracts like these. Because Aaron Ekblad is in the latter stage of his NHL career, you gotta remember he was a first overall pick 11 years ago. He's probably not on the right side of 30, and when you think about some of the other names, I mean, yeah, right, Dylan Larkin was also in that draft class, but a lot of folks are starting to talk about Larkin as a guy who may potentially, you know, by some stretch of the imagination, not actually finish his career as a Red Wing, just depending on the direction the team is going down and the fact that you have really good core players like Raymond and whatever. Like, Raymond's a 2020 draftee. Seider's 2019. Larkin's 2014. So if you wanted to make the argument that Larkin is potentially too old for this core, you could say that if it's like 2027, 2028, 2029, and the Wings still haven't really done much. So, yeah, kind of a weird detour towards the end of the video here, but I kind of get what Seravalli is talking about. At the end of the day, though, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. How do you feel about this entire sentiment that the Detroit Red Wings should not go out there and try to capture an Aaron Ekblad-like piece in free agency? What are your thoughts on the idea of a Tarasenko or a Compher trade? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.